HERECO stands for Hemp, Recovery and Community, and we're looking at how our ancestors were producing textile in balance with the environment that surrounded them. We modernized these ancient techniques to create a holistic, fair trade community in Ukraine to produce regenerative hemp materials. Imagine a garment that is made entirely by hand, that requires no natural resources except for sun, rain, human skill. Most of the industry professionals these days, with all their rising issues, would probably say it's not possible. And with HERECO, we right this wrong, and we prove that it can be done differently. By looking into these ancient techniques, we're not just producing sustainable materials, but we are also uniting and creating communities of artisans and generating employment opportunities for the people that live in the rural areas of our country. Why do you want to do this, and where did the idea come from? The story of HERECO began with us coming across the stocks of hand-loomed hemp. Our fascination initially arose over the cultural standpoint. We wanted to know how our ancestors were producing textile, and very soon we realized that the techniques used in the production answer a lot of tackling issues that industry is going through these days, such as environmental impact, social issues, and natural resources. Ukrainians have very intimate and ancient relationship with hemp as crop, but we are not unique in that. In fact, many European cultures share very similar heritage. However, the difference is that in Ukraine, the rural communities were so cut off from the common trade routes that this technique was maintained in practice until 1960s and 70s, which gives us this unique opportunity to still talk and find the people that know how to produce this material in such a very resourceful and sustainable way. And this is why we're taking advantage of this opportunity and turning it into the material. There is a strong component of culture and womanhood related to these materials. Because the skill of weaving enabled trade to the family, and it was of great value. When the girl was married off to a new family, this material was part of her dowry. However, the family of the groom could not sell or do anything about it. It was part of her personal wealth in case misfortune arose to the family. And we can argue that this was part of the independence and the strong value that a woman had within the family, and we think it's beautiful. Thanks to Worth Partnership Project, we could convert our fascination into a viable product. Initially, we prototyped with the materials that we found. We tested them for quality, we understood their potential, we understood their function. We then started sourcing yarns. So we found ancient hemp yarns, we looked into modern manufactured hemp yarns from Ukraine, and we looked at linen yarns as an alternative. And then this is how we approached artisans for further collaborations. With success and failure, we eventually produced our proof of concept, the real proof that we can use and we can produce material the way our ancestors were. This was truly a collaborative journey. Since much about the weaving traditions are not written, we were helped and advised by many different people around the country and beyond, and without them we would not be able to reach the stages where we are at right now. We would like to say a special thanks to Vereta Weaving Center, located between Vinnytsia and Stina, for their great help on the initial stages in the process, especially to Yuri for facilitating this collaboration and was super eager to help us to prove that yes, we can do this. Additionally, we would like to say thanks to Podillia Institute of Folklore Arts, especially to Natalia and Olga, who were prototyping with us these initial meters of the material, who hosted us and shared their immense knowledge and passion for Ukrainian textile. Finally, we would love to express our gratitude towards Olena Chola and the textile faculty of Lviv National University of Arts for her eagerness, love for weaving, and support along the way in the process. Without everybody helping us and sharing their skill, we won't be able to reach the results where we are today. What does fair trade mean? It's very, very important to keep in mind our own personal bias and ethnocentrism when we're trying to establish fair trade supply chains. We believe that our values and our needs are shared and accepted by everyone and everywhere, but that's not the case. Listening, understanding, and asking the artisans and everybody that is involved in the process is highly important if you want to establish a project or a value chain that is driven by impact and not volumes or profits. It is said that innovation is a well-forgotten past. In fact, doing something new or something entirely forgotten is an infinite circle of trial and error. A lot of errors included. That's why it's so important to preserve your heritage, because you can lose entire skill and know-how within 1 or 2 generations if it wasn't recorded. And even if it was, it would be immensely difficult to try to re-establish the process one by one. So everything is maintained in our heads and in the skills of our workers, and by not showing any respect, we lose it entirely very shortly. Imagine, in our case, it takes about 6 to 8 hours to set up one loom. And you don't know whether it's gonna work. You don't know whether threads will be tangled. You don't know if they're gonna maintain the whole structure. And each time there is a problem, you're gonna have to start all over again. Which is why it's insanely important to maintain this patience and be united by the passion for the product. And moreover, you have to share this very high level of trust and respect. We have an interesting story, and it was an anecdote that we actually lived through on our journey when we were prototyping in Lytton with Podillia Institute of Folklore. We were hosted by Babuля Nastya. She was a 75-year-old lady, and we spent many hours talking in the evenings, and I've been sharing with her all the problems and issues that we found on the way. And she told us that her mom was actually a weaver, and she was accepting orders from other villagers, so she was a very well-respected woman. So Babuля Nastya was describing the whole process from start to the end, and I was telling her that we have issues with the threads. They were tangling and we couldn't weave. It was really difficult. And at some point she just mentions, and then we had to soak those fibers in potato starch. And that instantly resonated with me, because coming from the industry, I know that very frequently on the industrial looms, especially when you're producing denim, it is very common to apply certain substances to maintain and enhance the strength of the yarns. And usually that is, a plastic-based material or a PVA or whatever it is. Well, potato starch is brilliant because it has exactly the same function and it solves so many problems. But the way this information came to us was out of absolute circumstance and random questions. And this is the journey that we have to embrace in order to try to recollect all these elements and all the steps of the production. So capturing by chance this type of information and finding these treasures only shows how much of this information is actually we haven't found yet. And it makes us curious on how many of these skills we actually lost by simply not being able to ask the right questions to the right people. Ukraine has immense cultural and land potential to become Europe's leader in natural and regenerative textile. With this initiative, we wanted to impact as many as possible people in Ukraine and tell about our textile to as many as possible people abroad. Of course, the situation in the country imposes a lot of implications. We have to deal with air raids, with logistical delays, we have to deal with power cuts, and of course, we have to deal with difficult mental situation that we find ourselves in. There was an ancient tradition in Ukraine. When misfortune came to the village, women would gather together and they would weave from dawn to the sunrise. Each of the women would have its own chore and they would work through the process. And in the morning, they would take this cloth and they would wrap the cross around. The cross was always placed at the main road leading to the village. And this material was an amulet, it was a protector. We think it's beautiful and hopeful, and we see how we can use these values in our modern world. These days, we talk a lot about circular economy and zero-waste design and sustainability within the industry. And we frequently see designers and engineers drawing their inspiration from other cultures, such as Japan, for example. And I guess with HERECO, we are trying to show how resourceful Ukrainian traditions can be and how they can be interpreted and modernized for improving this industry today. Strictly relying on the resources available nearby, Ukrainians managed to establish very efficient and effective production cycles, and we would like to popularize this resourcefulness as it goes very much hand in hand with how we approach economy and sustainability today. Why it is important to do this? We live in the world where most of us believe that things just magically appear on the shelves, that the garments simply happen. And not just among consumers, but also a lot of industry professionals that have no idea about the origins or the history of the materials they work with. This disconnection is one of the root causes of many issues and injustices that we see and deal with in the industry today. We talk about European textile, but in fact, barely any raw material is actually produced in Europe. It always came from somewhere. With this project, we are trying to change that, and we try to show that this can be done differently. We are a unique supplier with an incredible product and an amazing story, and we want to work with designers and partners that see value in our material and the story. We also hope to spark similar initiatives all around Ukraine and Europe to benefit many communities and many people. We need to learn to find new ways of producing textile locally, holistically, and sustainably.